No DQ Galaxy. We are live with a recap of AEW Dynamite. Winter is coming. 2024, Kansas City, Missouri. Shout out to everybody watching this, whether it's live or on demand. I appreciate your viewership and support. Now, let me know your thoughts if you're watching live. Leave your posts in the chat room, your comments, your feedback on the show. Now, let's get to AEW's Winter is Coming special. We kicked off with a tag team match. The AEW World Champion Jonathan Moxley and Pac going up against Jay White and Orange Cassidy. They started the match by brawling all over the place for quite a bit of time. Eventually, they got in the ring and the match officially started. Moxley was able to avoid the orange punch, and then Pac, who had gotten the blind tag, took advantage of the situation. Death Riders had the upper hand for a while. Christian Cage was watching in the luxury box, the suite. Then Christian sent his crew away for whatever reason. The match continued. Orange Cassidy went at it with Jon Moxley. Then Pac and Jay White came in. Things started to break down. Orange Cassidy hit the beach break on Moxley, but Moxley kicked out. Then Wheeler Yuta got on the apron. Orange Cassidy knocked him off with the orange punch. He hit another orange punch to Jon Moxley. But then, guess what happened? Hangman Adam Page showed up, attacked Jon Moxley, which caused a disqualification. This was quite the long match, and we got another DQ, which is starting to become more frequent in AEW. They're relying more on the DQ finishes now than they were in the early years of the company. It's fine. It's what it is. Orange Cassidy went after Adam Page, but accidentally hit his tag team partner, Jay White. Jay White responded by laying out Orange Cassidy with the Blade Runner. Then we had the Death Riders coming in, taking advantage of the situation. They got the upper hand of all the good guys. And then this is where it got odd to me. Backstage, Jon Moxley cut a promo. Now, keep in mind, Jon Moxley is the bad guy here. He's the villain. He's the heel. But he was throwing down the gauntlet. He issued the challenge. He proposed a 4-way match for World's End, even though he's the heel. He's saying, you know what? I'll fight all of you. Let's do a 4-way. What a heel. I know Jon Moxley is supposed to be a badass and all, but even Roman Reigns would try to get out of fighting multiple opponents and that he would be forced into it. Not sure how I feel about that with Moxley just making the challenge. Kind of makes the opponents look weak. You want Moxley to be a little scared, but hey, whatever. That's Jon Moxley's gimmick. He's a tough guy, and he's going to take on all challengers. What a heel. So that is set up. That match will take place at World's End. To me, it's a filler match. I don't see Moxley losing the title, but we'll talk about World's End and our predictions in a couple of weeks. I don't see anybody in this match being the one to dethrone Moxley. I know who I would like to see. His initials are RS. Take a wild guess who you think that is, but I don't see that happening, unfortunately. We had another vignette for the returning Bandito. You had these guys in a snowy western town trying to get him, but he ended up beating up all these guys. That's fine. It was creative. I like the vignettes. Don't necessarily think it's going to amount to anything, but we'll see. Christian Cage cut a promo in his luxury box, and he said that Moxley has what he wants, the AEW World title, and Christian said he is going to send Moxley right back to rehab. He said he's the face of TBS, and then Hook broke the glass from this door to enter the suite, and he attacked Christian. We still don't know where Christian sent Nick Wayne and Kip Sabian, but nonetheless, Hook beat up Christian for a while, and then eventually Sabian and Wayne returned, and Hook was somehow able to get away from the scene. Segment was fine. Hook, Christian, to me, it's another filler match. I don't even know what's going to happen with Christian cashing in the not Money in the Bank contract, nor do I really care at this point. I do not know where Samoa Joe is, other than he was filming that show, the Twisted Metal or whatever it's called. What is that show called? He was doing that show. Last time we saw him, he got put through a wall by Chris Jericho, so you would think that whenever he returns, he will go after Jericho. Twisted Metal. Thank you for that, Matthew. Yeah, I got it. Twisted Metal. Thank you, Walter. Thank you to everyone, Jerry. Twisted Metal was the show the show that Joe was doing, and one would think he's going to come back to get his hands on Chris Jericho. We'll talk about Jericho here in just a few moments. We had Will Ospreay versus Claudio in a Continental Classic tournament match. Claudio had like 6 points at this point, and Will had 3, so pretty obvious who was winning this one. But it was a good match. Claudio got the upper hand. He did the big swing, sending Ospreay into the steel steps, and then he put Ospreay's hand on the steps and stomped on it. But then after the break, Ospreay started to get back into it, built up some momentum. However, Claudio avoided the Sky Twister press, took him out with a European uppercut, but then Ospreay came back with an Oz cutter. Then Claudio rolled to the outside. Ospreay got him back in the ring, and then Claudio took advantage with an uppercut, but Ospreay was able to kick out. Claudio took him down with a lariat. Ospreay kicked out again. So Claudio went for the neutralizer, but Ospreay countered it into a pinfall and picked up the 1-2-3 victory. Ospreay wins this one. Jerry, my feeling is Ospreay will win this tournament. Either him or Fletcher. Hell, that might end up being the final match, but one would think that Ospreay is the odds-on favorite to win this. I mean, he should be in the world title picture. He would be the guy to beat Moxley at this point. But yeah, he's stuck in this tournament right now. He's another guy they could go with. MJF is another guy they could go with if they ever get him out of this Adam Cole feud. It was a good match. Predictable, but good. And then Claudio attacked him after the match, and that's when Darby Allin ran down to make the save for Will Ospreay. We had Ricochet interviewed backstage by Renee Paquette, and he hyped up his Continental Classic match with Brody King. Promo was okay. I know everybody jokes about how there was a reason WWE didn't let him cut promos. He did all right. He hyped up the match. He said Brody's big and scary, but he's not Ricochet. And he also flashed his MVP business card, and that was the only reference to the Hurt Syndicate on this entire show. Mistake, if you're asking me. These guys are the hottest act in the company, and you're not having them on TV? Why? MJF arrived. Speaking of guys who at one time were the hottest act in the company, MJF did arrive. He's finally in the flesh for once on TV. And then we had Matt Cardona speaking with Renee Paquette. Cardona has a Ring of Honor title match against Chris Jericho coming up at the Final Battle pay-per-view. And he says he belongs in AEW and is always ready. Well, somebody tell Matt Cardona that Ring of Honor is allegedly its own brand and not AEW, although, let's face it, Ring of Honor really is like a third brand for AEW. Whatever. There shouldn't even be a Ring of Honor at this point. But yeah, Matt Cardona going for the match with Chris Jericho. And I'm still wondering, why the hell hasn't Matt Cardona resurfaced in WWE? His wife is there. Triple H seems to be a fan of guys getting second opportunities. Maybe they just don't see much in him. I'm very perplexed as to why Matt Cardona hasn't returned to WWE, considering the circumstances and what he's done outside of WWE. Maybe they just don't see anything in him. I don't know. But yeah, he's facing Chris Jericho, and they're doing some sort of a contract signing on the Ring of Honor show, which, good for them, I guess. Jericho still gets TV time. He's got this new segment now, which we'll talk about here. I mean, really not much to say about it. It's called the New York Minute, and he hyped up the match with Cardona. Yawn, don't care. So we'll move on. But yes, Chris Jericho did make a brief appearance on this show with his little New York Minute segment. And then we had Adam Cole, baby, versus Kyle O'Reilly, a match to determine who faces MJF for that Dynamite Diamond ring at World's End. And you had the Kingdom confronting Kyle O'Reilly, but he doesn't want anything to do with them. And Adam Cole went for a handshake. Kyle O'Reilly just slapped it away. They had their match. It was back and forth. It was competitive. Cole was able to avoid a diving knee drop, and then O'Reilly avoided the boom knee, but then Cole finally hit it. Could not make the cover, though, and he came off the top with the Panama Sunrise. However, O'Reilly came back from that. He put on an ankle lock. Cole escaped from that, and then Cole was perhaps on the verge of finishing off O'Reilly. That's when MJF showed up to try and cost Cole the match, but he missed his Dynamite Diamond shot. Cole took out MJF, and then O'Reilly tried to apply another ankle lock, but this time Cole rolled him up and got the 1-2-3 victory. No surprise here. Adam Cole versus MJF at World's End, the 1-year anniversary of when Adam Cole betrayed MJF and was the devil. Only now, Adam Cole is somehow the babyface in this, and MJF is the heel. MJF ran off, and then Adam Cole wanted to shake hands with O'Reilly, but O'Reilly once again blew him off and left the ring. So there you go. It's too little too late as far as I'm concerned. You know, when MJF came back at Double or Nothing and took out Adam Cole, they blew it off then. It was over. It lost its steam. There's no reason to go back to it. And they haven't really been able to build up heat for this. It just feels like a random ass match, which is quite a shame considering these two guys headlined All In, their biggest crowd ever for AEW, and look where they're at now. Shout out to Walter Cruz, Mr. Reliable. Much love to you. Walter sent in a $5 super chat, says, what's worse, the WWE version of ECW or AEW's version of Ring of Honor? This seems like a PJB type of question. That's Psycho or Pico Jet Black, whatever you want to call them. I'd say Ring of Honor is worse. At least with the ECW brand, we had some train wreck entertainment, whether it was Sabu trying to relive his glory days or the the zombie. Remember that guy? And then they tried to push some people like CM Punk, John Morrison. They tried to make it a developmental brand, but ECW was never going to be what it once was. And in the end, it ended up becoming NXT. Ring of Honor, like, it's not what it was. Like, there's really no need for it to still exist at this point. Yeah, I agree with Shea Roberts. MJF just seems to be there. He just is another guy on the roster. He doesn't feel like a big deal anymore. We had FTR cutting a backstage promo to hype up the first Dynamite of 2025. It will be Fight for the Fallen, Asheville, North Carolina. And it will be the first Dynamite that is also simulcasted, not just on TBS, but Max. Big show coming up for the beginning of the year. That kicks off 2025. Then we had a sit-down interview with Darby Allin and Tony Schiavone. And Darby was making himself bleed at one point. He talked about how he needs to win the Continental Classic because it represents the passion of AEW. And he said that Moxley has just been telling himself lies about AEW. He said Moxley's wrong, yada, yada, yada. We then had Ricochet versus Brody King in a Continental Classic match. And it was largely dominated by Brody King. Ricochet came off the top rope and basically just crashed into a brick wall. Brody was no-selling Ricochet's chops and some of his offense. Eventually, Ricochet was able to start to build up some momentum. He came off the top of the 450 springboard, but Brody kicked out at one, and Brody continued his offense. Ricochet was trying to do something. Eventually, he was able to powerbomb Brody out of the corner. He came off the top with a shooting star. He connected with it, but then Brody grabbed him by the throat. They both ended up in the corner. Now, at some point, the top turnbuckle got exposed, and Ricochet was able to use this to his advantage. He knocked Brody into the exposed turnbuckle and picked up the win with not one but two of his Spirit Gun elbow strikes to pick up the victory. So Ricochet gets one over on Brody King to gain some points in the tournament. Match was solid. It was a good match. I still think Ricochet might benefit from a heel turn, maybe joining the Hurt Syndicate. Like, when are we going to get a new member of that group? Like, they were teasing it, but we've really had no follow-up. Like, nothing's happening with that. We had a backstage segment, and speaking of not capitalizing on people, so Private Party beat the Young Bucks to win the tag team titles, and they're barely on the show now. They're in this little backstage segment, and then you have Action Andretti and Leo Rush and Top Flight, like any random guy you can find backstage to be a potential challenger. And those two teams are going to fight on Collision to see who fights Private Party next. Man, like, these guys are all good wrestlers, but it really feels like a lack of star power in the tag team division. Like, they really need to beef things up and get some new teams in the mix. I'm just saying, like, it feels flat right now. And I almost forgot that Private Party were the tag team champions. We had Renee Paquette speaking to Mercedes Moné and Anna Jay. And Mercedes brought up how Anna Jay is 26 and she's already doing well for herself. However, Mercedes brought up how when she was 26, she was already a 5-time world champion. And Anna Jay responded by saying she admires Mercedes, but Mercedes needs to be careful about seeing her as an underdog, because Anna Jay, all she's done is prove people wrong about her, and all she needs is 3 seconds to beat Mercedes Moné. My guess is she's not going to get the job done, but we'll see. That match is coming up. I think it's next week, but I might be wrong. Correct me if it's a different week. I think it's next week's show. We had our main event, which was, if you're paying attention here, you realized I haven't talked about a women's match because the women's match actually got the main event spot for once, which as soon as I heard about it being the main event, I thought, okay, this must be Toni Storm's return. That's the reason why they're putting it in the main event spot, because they have something planned for the end of the show. So we'll talk about that. We had Thunder Rosa out there, so they're getting her back on Dynamite finally. Remember when she was red hot? Another person that seemed to have a lot of momentum, and granted, she did get injured and was out for like a year, but they brought her back and didn't really do much with her. Sounds like Jamie Hayter. Sounds like quite a few people. That's the thing. It sucks when you get hurt. Happens in WWE, happens in AEW. Sometimes you get hurt, you lose your spot. And it's funny. Tony Khan and Vince McMahon, you might think they're very different, but in a way they're similar. They have their toys. They have their wrestlers that they liked. And once they get bored of that toy, they move on to the next one. Tony Khan and Vince kind of similar in that way. Like you look at Wardlow, you look at Britt Baker, you look at Thunder Rosa, you look at a lot of these acts in AEW, Ricky Starks, Jamie Hayter, they get their push, then either they get hurt or the promoter, whether it's Vince or Tony, they move on to their next person that they bring in. And Tony Khan's signing people left and right. He's got his new toy to play with. Then when he gets bored with that toy, he moves on to the next person. So, yeah, Thunder Rosa is on Dynamite, so maybe this will amount to something. I don't know. At one time, she was one of the hottest acts in the company. I remember when NWA Power was actually kind of a hot show before the pandemic. Thunder Rosa was there. Ricky Starks was there. Eli Drake was there, of course, LA Knight. NWA got gutted. But yeah, they had some talented people. If you guys never watched NWA Power, like in 2019, it was a pretty entertaining show. And I wonder where they could have gone if the pandemic didn't shut everything down for them. But yeah, that was a little bit of a hot era for them. And they had Eddie Kingston too. Right before Eddie Kingston signed with AEW. So yeah, they had a lot of people that were doing well that ended up either being signed by AEW or WWE. Very interesting period. So anyways, let's talk about the match. It was a good main event. Mina got in a lot of offense, which is usually a clear sign that person's losing. She targeted the leg of Toni Storm, did the Bret Hart figure 4 around the ring post spot. And then afterwards, after the break, she kept the momentum going. But then Mariah came back, hit the Mayday. Mina kicked out of that. And then Mina had one last flurry of offense, but then it wasn't enough to beat her. Mariah picked up the win with the Storm Zero. No surprise here. And not even a surprise what happened with Toni Storm, who made her return. But the one surprise is that she came back as the OG Toni Storm, the old gimmick, the old music, the sunglasses, the hat. She has seemingly dropped the timeless gimmick, unless this is all part of her mind games. And we'll see her back as timeless, or maybe she creates some sort of hybrid of the gimmicks. Who knows what she's going to do? But yeah, she is back, which I figured once they announced this for the main event, she would be in the main event spot. And I figured she would be back pretty soon here. I presume it will be her versus Mariah May at the Grand Slam pay-per-view in February, which will be in Australia. would not shock me if she wins the world title back from Mariah at that show. So good stuff here to end the show. Dynamite was pretty decent this week. Better than some of the other weeks. It was Winter is Coming, so you would expect a higher quality show. I did like the ending. I thought it ended on a pretty strong note. There's still the problem that I've been having. I don't care about a lot of the storylines. I still don't care about MJF versus Adam Cole. I do not care about the Jon Moxley storyline. But the wrestling was good. And I do have a little bit of interest in Toni Storm versus Mariah May. I will say they should have had Bobby Lashley on the show. Like, they really got to push somebody joining that group. Like, they did the little business card tease, but I feel like they should have had more than just that. So I did have a few issues with the show, but it wasn't too bad this week. I give it a B-. Solid Dynamite. Especially compared to some recent weeks. And next week, they're doing the Holiday Bash. So it looks like they're trying to end the year on a high note. They're doing several of these theme shows, Holiday Bash, New Year's Smash, Fight for the Fallen. They got a lot going on. And for those of you that want more No DQ, well, Thursday night, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, we will be doing a predictions video for Saturday night's main event. So make sure you guys tune in for that. 8 o'clock Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, Thursday night on the No DQ YouTube channel. Saturday night's main event predictions. Tune in for that. Have a great rest of your week. Say yes to NoDQ.com. And I will see you all next time. Take care, everybody.